YouTubers, happy Homebrew Wednesday. So in my hands I have my two failed attempts at trying to make a black and tan with my pilsner and my breakfast stout, or my Holy Beggar's breakfast stout. I think what happened was that even with using a spoon to slow the flow of my stout, it was still coming out too fast and preventing me from being able to pour just slow enough for the beers to remain separate like a black and tan is supposed to be. But both of these blends are a little different ratios, so I'll just sip on them. Made a cool experiment about, blending home brews to get different nuances, different flavor combos, stuff like that. Because this Victory glass is the first one, and I poured a little extra pilsner into it when I filled this one too much. So this one's a little more pilsner forward, and this one's a little stout forward. So in order not to waste any more beer trying to see if third time is the charm, I'm just gonna sip on these for a while and go from there. But I'll just put these aside so I can talk to you a little bit. Either way, they would have blended eventually somewhat, but it would have been cool to be able to have, the cool look of a black and tan. But put those aside so I can dissect them later on. So two more things and two clips that I'm going to show you after this intro to touch the update you what's been going on. So I recently opened the bottle of my newer batch of barley wine, and somehow it overcarbed, which I kind of thought I put too much priming sugar anyway, which wasn't surprising, but it also tastes hot now and a little oxidized. So in order to prevent it from oxidizing too much more, I quickly put the rest of the last 30 bottles or so in my main kitchen fridge and in my keezer for a couple of days, and tonight, which I'll show you in another clip, I'm going to be wax dipping them like I did with the other oak aged barley wine from the previous vintage, so to try to save the beer and have, even though that as it ages, that whatever oxygen has seeped in now will absorb into solution, it'll help the beer age over time, but not have any more go in and ruin the beer, even though it'll pour probably over carbonated by the time I open a bottle in 6 months or so. But in terms of barley wines, as you know, I wax dipped the previous vintage, as I said. So that vintage, I entered it also in a competition recently called Homebrew Alley. I haven't gotten my ribbon yet, but it won 3rd place in the smoked and wood aged beer category. And just to note, the competition has over 600 entries. It's New York City's biggest competition of the year. And I felt really good. I entered 5 beers. They all scored pretty well, besides for the newer barley wine, which now I know why. They all scored, in the 30s, which is, pretty good. And my oak aged barley wine got a 39, which is awesome, and such a big competitive competition. So once I get my score sheets, hopefully by next week, I'll go over them in Homebrew Wednesday just to show you, what I thought about my beers versus what the judges thought about my beers. But it was really good to enter my first competition and place in my first competition. So looking forward to that. In terms of local homebrewing stuff, yesterday I went to the February meeting of the New York City Homebrewers Guild, which is the main umbrella club basically for all of New York City. There was a great presentation by a new local brewery called Three's Brewing. You get a lot of cool tips about, starting your own small brewery, especially in New York City, and just a lot about going from homebrewing to professional, which was really cool. And we tried some of his beers, and I brought, my double IPA and an aged bottle of my Imperial Rye Saison, and it was really fun. But to segue, so I don't ramble on, giving you updates, this Sunday, the 22nd, is a big event called Brewed, where all the clubs from New York City are coming together in one big party, and pouring beers and, talking homebrew, and it should be lots of fun. So I plan on filming a special video for that. I'll probably, post clips in next week's Homebrew Wednesday, and then the next day or whatever, post the big Brewed video. So it should be pretty awesome. I'm sure some of you guys have seen also have had events. Like I know Every Homebrewing has gone to such events recently, where homebrew clubs are represented at a beer festival. So should be pretty awesome. I haven't been to one of these, all-out events yet. Ever since start joining the local clubs, I'm actually going to be going with the Bitter Nesters Swap Club, just because we decided to represent ourselves as a club at this event. So it should be pretty awesome. But also as another clip in terms of my brewing, I mean everyone's been loving the double IPA. It's starting to clear out, and I will show you also with the wax dipping. Another small clip that I brewed another batch of my pilsner. I tweaked a little bit by having the amounts of Vienna and Munich just to get a little less body in the beer and a little less sweetness from the malts. And it's the same yeast, same hops, same mash process. So I didn't film brew day because it's only 2 tiny tweaks, which I'll only be able to tell the difference once I taste the beer. So that's that. I still haven't, decided what I'm gonna brew next. I also haven't decided what I'm gonna brew for the SJ Pour competition, which I do want to participate as long as time and money allow. But yeah, so those are the updates. I'll grab my 2 pint glasses, which I really don't use pint glasses so often, so it's pretty cool to have this experimental blend in pint glasses for a change. So cheers, happy Homebrew Wednesday, and enjoy the rest of the footage. Cheers. Alright, so we're sealing my bottles again with the green wax because I had a lot left over. So I'm probably going to have to take like a silver or gold Sharpie and write like 14-15 on this one. Because again, I brewed it at the end of 2014, but I only started really drinking on it in 2015. So I'll probably have to write that on the bottles just to differentiate between the ones I have left from the last vintage. But just to show you my process, if you guys didn't see it last time, is basically you melt the wax in an aluminum can that you take, they can reuse, like a can of beans, and just take the label off, obviously, and then you melt the wax in the can, and then you let it cool down till it starts to thicken up. Otherwise it's just going to run off the bottles and you're going to have to use a bunch of coats. So you can basically let it cool down for like 5-10 minutes, and either use like a wooden dowel like I have to test the thickness, or you could just do a test bottle, and worst that'll be the one bottle that you have to do more than one extra coat, because I guarantee you're gonna want to do extra coats on certain bottles, even though one coat sometimes is enough. So you basically put it in, twist it around to make sure the whole neck gets coated, and then you leave it there for 5 seconds or so, just so the wax can really cling to the neck of the bottle, and then you lift it up, and as you lift it out, you twist so that the wax doesn't start dripping down like you see on some craft beer bottles where the wax is dripping everywhere. But if you twist it as it comes out, you see as it's nice and neat. You can clearly see that the wax has gotten under the cap, and you can still see the cap, but it's it's clearly sealed because the wax really got in there. So that's my basic process, so just one bottle at a time. And because I have these bottles in the fridge, I'm doing it in order, and even though the bottles are still cold, I'm doing it in order of when the bottles were taken out of the fridge, so that the warmer bottles are the ones getting waxed first, so that I don't cool the wax down too much by dunking in the coldest bottles. So, you know, for this one, you know, you'd think it's good, but just anxious me, you're just gonna dip it in one last time, you know, let it set for a few extra seconds, and then twist it out like the other ones. So now, you know, it's kind of overkill, but, you know, but it'll harden and I won't have to worry about the seal. So I'm going to go ahead and continue getting this done. You know, the process is not going to change. If you need more wax, obviously you melt more and then let it cool down. But really, you don't need it. You think you need the whole bag, but I used less than half the bag for my first batch, so we'll see how much more I need as I go along. Hey Brewed. Hey guys, so here's my pilsner, or Lion's Roar pilsner. As you see, another really full fermenter. Because when I pitched the yeast starter, I was trying to decant, and I saw that the yeast cake on the bottom of the starter after I cold crashed was getting disturbed, so I had to pour more of the starter in than I usually would. But as you see here, I'll use my phone as a flashlight just quickly so I don't ruin the beer. As you see, it reached full high krausen pretty well. I used firm cap in the beginning when after pitching the yeast, so even though it blew off a tiny bit, it still didn't, you know, cause any messes like it did with my double IPA. So this is the end of day 9 going into day 10 of fermentation. So as per my schedule for this beer, tonight before I go to sleep, I'm gonna start hiring the temperature for the diacetyl rest. You know, so I'll bring it from like 51 where it is now up to about 62 or maybe 64, maybe 65, you know, in that range, in the low 60s for a couple of days. That once it gets up there, raising it about 4 to 5 degrees every 12 hours or so. And then after the diacetyl rest, I'll bring it back into the high 50s and dry hop it for a week, where I leave it, you know, in the high 50s for 4 days and then slowly cold crash it down to lagering temp and keg it for the lagering stage. But this is what it looks like now, and hopefully in upcoming Homebrew Wednesdays I'll show you some updates. Cheers.